Okay, so whenever you're ready.
Hello, Walt. Here's my story. It's called What's That Again? It's amazing where stories come from. In 1974, on our way to Johannesburg from Manzini, Swaziland, we stopped to pick up an American Peace Corps volunteer who taught science at a school in the African bush. This is his story. It was an unusually hot day in December, and the tin roof of our cinder block one-room schoolhouse intensified the heat. The large thorn tree outside could have shaded us, but the barefoot students, the boys in shorts and short-sleeved shirts, and the girls in short-sleeved dresses seemed comfortable inside. I realized that ice would keep the biology specimens, lizards that day, from drying out. So I asked Musha to walk into town to get a bucket of ice from the butcher. The other students worked on their homework assignments while we waited for him. It seemed to be taking Musha much too long. The dirt road into town was little more than a mile. Where was he? I worried that the ice would melt before he returned. Had the butcher been too busy to fill a bucket with ice? Had Musha decided to skip class and take the rest of the day off? Finally, he walked into the classroom with a bucket of eyes.
Oh.
Was a butcher after all. Yeah.
Oh, my. So how about you?
Well, I'm ready. I think I am.
Okay, let me get my camera aimed over here.
Yeah. All right, let's see. This will turn on here. Oh, it did, didn't it? Oh, look at that.
So you need to say hi to Walt, too,
I
to
will.
start.
I will. Okay. I don't know where to start here with this one. Should I read them the whole thing?
Sure. Start at the beginning. That's good.
Well, yeah, I guess. Okay, hi Walt, this is Mac. I'm going to read you a story about a place in Minneapolis called Seven Corners. So, here we go. Okay, there is a weird intersection in South Minneapolis near the Mississippi River where Washington Avenue, Cedar Avenue, 15th Street, and 16th Street intersect, forming a total of 7 corners. We moved into an apartment building just a block away at 308 16th Avenue. Plain 3-story box of a place with one entrance up a flight of stairs in the front and wooden balconies on the second and third floors in the back. 12 families called this large brick barn their home. Our stall was on the second floor, right side, back, so we had a deck. The 5 of us lived in 3 rooms, living room, bedroom, and kitchen, heated in the winter by an oil stove. It was mighty cozy in the bedroom with my sister and I in the bunk bed, and my parents and my younger sister Jane sharing the big bed. Not much privacy for anyone. The bathroom was in a hallway outside our front door, and we shared it with the family in the front apartment. First thing I noticed as we were getting used to all this was the noise. The noise from the apartments beside us, above us, and the noise from the street. The windows would be open, and you could hear the cars, the trucks, the street cars, and let's not forget the punch press factory right behind us. Sten Manufacturing was working night and day because of the war. You could hear and feel the thumping. I shouldn't really criticize the place. They hired my dad, so he was one of those making the noise. Your nose got to work out in the cities too. It seemed like every apartment you walked by had a different smell coming out of it. The traffic smelled and the factory smelled. Every bar had its own smell too. Oh, did I forget to mention there were 8 taverns within 3 blocks of our building. One of them right next door. I wonder if my dad chose where we lived because it was just, or was it just a coincidence? Or not? Other than the bars, it was like living in the middle of a shopping mall. As I spin around the neighborhood in my mind, I see my grade school, U of M campus, a church, a bathhouse, a restaurant, a bank, a movie theater, a settlement house, a fire station, a library, a delicatessen, a drugstore, a burger joint, and a grocery store. It sounds like a small town, but remember, it's Snooze Boulevard, the Scandinavian center of the city. If my mother wanted to be closer to her family, she sure got her wish. Her oldest brother, Emmett, and his wife, Carol, and their 3 kids moved in right above us. Her sister, Marie, and her husband, Mike, and their 3 kids moved in across the hall. And then her brother, Laverne, and his wife, Audrey, and their 2 daughters were in the same, they were right across the hall in the other apartment. It was like a commune. I sure had a lot of cousins to play with as if I needed them. There was a 2-story house next door to our apartment building where the Anderson family lived. And what a clan that was. Mary and Reuben had 11 kids. It was like living next to the Waltons. It wasn't long before Orland, one of the Anderson boys, and I found each other. He was in my 1st grade class in Clay grade school, only 3 blocks away. We would be, all right, we'll back up here. It wasn't long before Orland, one of the Anderson boys, and I found each other. He was in my 1st grade class at Clay grade school, only 3 blocks away. We would be great friends for the next 6 years. I'm not sure why Orland and I hit it off so well. Maybe it was because we shared the same quest for adventure and excitement. He was so worldly in the ways of the city, and all the ways we could get into trouble. He taught me how to cross the 6 lanes of traffic in front of our buildings when we went to school, how to time it so you could zip across without waiting, and earn bravery points for being able to slap the fender on a passing car. No points for streetcars. How to remove pop bottles from behind one store and bring them to another store where you could get a few cents for each one, then go to the drugstore and buy 2 comic books for the price of one by putting one inside the other. And how to play spread. It was such a fun game where you threw your jackknife at the kid's shoe standing across from you, and he had to spread his legs to where the blade was stuck in the ground. It had its hazards. We spent a lot of time on Orland's front porch, mostly goofing off. We did things like wrapping the back of our hand with a big comb and then swinging your arm around until there was a trickle of blood running down each punch mark. Then for more fun, we would take 10 deep breaths, and while holding the last one, someone would grab you from behind and squeeze your chest until you nearly passed out. Things like that. Just normal kids' games. I developed a real love for streetcars during those years. They were beautiful and noisy, but they got us anywhere we wanted to go for 11 cents, or less, when we used Orland's discount plan. One of us paid, asked for a transfer, took our seat as quick as we could, and then threw the transfer out the window. The next kid picked it up and got on the next streetcar. Now we were down to half price. It worked most of the time. Every streetcar had a smoking section with a steel floor in the back of the car. The challenge was to stand in the middle of the floor and try to keep your balance as the car made all its starts and stops. The smokers got a big kick out of this. Once in a while, the trolley arm would come off the electric cable that powered it. The engineer would have to come back, grab the rope, and maneuver it back onto the cable. We sometimes got blamed for causing the problem. How ridiculous. Okay, that's as far as I got, Walt. We'll keep it up.
That's pretty good.
Well, that's life in the cities.
You know, I grew up on a farm where all we did was just work.
Oh,
That's the difference between city kids and farm
no.
kids.
Have you been back to 7 quarters since, or
Oh,
lately,
sure.
or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Has it changed?
Oh, a lot of it is still there.
Yeah.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
The U of M campus has expanded all around, and our apartment building is now a parking lot.
Yeah.
Right next to the freeway, but a lot of the buildings are still there. The old grocery store is now a camper's hiking place. It's called some kind of mountaineer mountain.
Oh, okay.
And the whole block is still there where all those stores were.
A lot of
And the
the
grade
taverns
school
still
is
there?
gone. That's part of the campus now for the U of
Yeah.
M.
A lot of the taverns still there, or?
Oh, let's see, how many are still there? How many can I count? Well,
Persian Palms, is that still there?
no, that was way down Washington Avenue.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't on Seven Corners. Yeah, the Stockholm and the Persian Palms were way down. That's where we shine shoes.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of Adolph's and Eric's and the Light Bright Spot. I think there's about 5 left.
Okay.
Yeah. The bandbox, though, I think it was closed. And I just seen on the news where they had a story about the bandbox, and I took attention to it. And I thought, oh, that's the one on Seven Corners, and this was not the one on Seven Corners. This was someplace else. And then they said there was probably about 5 of them around town,
Okay.
called the bandbox. But that was the name of the hamburger joint right on the corner of Seven Corners, right by Samuelson's drugstore. Yeah. When we moved there used to be a movie theater up there, down in Washington, towards Walensky's junkyard. And it had burned out. There was a fire there, and the building was still there, though. And we would go play in there. The seats were all gone and everything, but the stage was all there.
Okay.
And the stairway was kind of burned out. You could still kind of climb it if you were careful. And then you could get up to the areas above the stage and play up there, and then get up on the roof and stuff. So that was kind of a nice playground.
Yeah.
But there was a big fire back in the late 50s, I think, that burned out one whole corner there. And I got pictures of it. They had an aerial picture taken, what looks like it from the top of the drugstore, across over to this place, and the flames were coming out of it, and all the fire trucks were around it.
Yeah.
But that was one of the bars that got lost. My dad spent most of his time at Eric's, which was right next door, because he could just go from the parking lot right over to our house. He worked at Sten's, which was behind us, so he could come out of work to the bar and then over to the apartment. So it was like only like a little circle there. Caused a lot of problems. Sten's was a fun place to play too. We could go up on the roof of Sten's, and when they got some new punch presses in there, some of them were so big that they had to build a little house on top of the roof.
Okay.
So that the big thing could come up and down. And they put windows around it there so we could go up on the roof there and then look inside and watch the guys working and stuff.
Wow.
I got hurt one time. I watched too many Superman movies or something. We found a bunch of cardboard behind the Sten's manufacturing, and they had a pile of stuff back there like garbage or something. And I found these 2 big pieces of cardboard, and I thought if I put them on my arms and took off from the roof, I could kind of float down to that.
Of course.
Hell, I didn't even make it to the pile. I dropped right straight down to the ground. Damn near broke my leg. Bad idea. I didn't flap or something, or I don't know what went wrong. Maybe I should have got up some speed or something.
Okay, Tom, I guess we better, I'm recording here, so.
Okay.
Oh, my. Okay. Shut up.
You remember, I told you last month I had something ready. It's been audited about 4 times since then. Edited,
Yeah,
edited about 4 times since then. I call it living in the past and now. I was wandering around in the back of my mind, thinking, a dangerous thing to do, but a thing with which we are all confronted from time to time, when I came to the conclusion that I am constantly attached to things from the past. Much of what I think of as the present is really past. By the time I register something that I see and process the information, it has become history. So what I see is always past. How things were is what is registered. Like a lightning strike is the source of thunder, but a delay in my perception is caused by the distance the sound has to travel from the collapsing of the air. Blown up, superheated by the electricity that has passed through it, then cooling and collapsing with a boom, and traveling to my ear at the speed of sound. So I see the lightning, and then later I hear the thunder. I can process all of that, and when I have, it's all history. How far in the past I live will be determined by what I am looking at and how rapidly I process it. Astronomers tell us that light travels at approximately 186,300 miles per second. So in 1 year, light travels a light year, approximately 6 trillion miles. So we look at the night sky, and we see the light from distant stars that has been traveling for years, different numbers of years, depending on how far that light has had to travel to get here. I don't see what is happening now, but what happened 40, closest star, or hundreds or thousands of years ago. And of course, what we see never was, because what we are looking at is a jumble of images from different times in the past. So it is, when I try to see what is happening, so I can make wise decisions, I look at different things from the past, things whose origins I may have long since forgotten. They were so long ago, and perhaps I misinterpreted at the time. I want to be up to date, but I often get stuck in the past. I have the same problem that the stars give me, in that I don't see it all. For example, I don't see what is inside stuff. Recently, a very large tree came down across my driveway. It was rotten on the inside. Surprise, a strong breeze took it down. Much smaller trees that were not rotten on the inside stood up to the winds. I just never have all the information about reality. I don't remember the exact setting, but I do remember the emphasis of a short movie I saw years ago. It began by showing me a scene which seemed obvious. I knew what had happened. Then the scene was viewed from another perspective. What I was sure I knew was not what had happened. When I knew more about the past, I was able to better evaluate the situation. So not only do I only have things past to evaluate for knowing the truth, but I don't know everything, so that oftentimes my information is so limited, my conclusions are faulty. I can hear the words that others speak, but I do not know the definition of your words formed by your unique experiences. I have recently taken the stand that I voice by saying, I don't know anything. By that I mean that I am making my judgment with partial knowledge, but I believe we all have to either decide or remain stuck in the past. So I decide on things and act accordingly. No one else has to see things as I do, and I don't have to see things the way anyone else does. The wood-burning stove that was in the middle of our living room when I was in elementary school taught me that you don't lay your hands on hot surfaces. I can even share that information with others who might say, yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes the things that cause me to decide are obvious, and at other times they are lost in the jumble of past events. Is there no present to which we can go? Of course there is. We can choose to act, and when we act, we live in the present. The question is, in what kind of present do we choose to live? That determines what the present looks like to you. If you choose to lie, the present looks deceitful. If you choose to be truthful, the present looks trustworthy. If you choose to be giving, then the present looks like a place where you know that you're going to have what you need. It will be given to you. If you choose to use all your resources for yourself, then you know good and well that your resources are limited and you never have enough. So how do we live with ourselves or others who make bad choices? When I was in the Navy, I remember guys who could not put a sentence together without several swear words. I also have experienced people of whom one says, how do you know when they are lying? Answer, they are talking. Such a person just cannot talk without lying. The person knows that everyone is lying to them all the time. I always remember seeing Baryshnikov. He was a Russian dancer.
Yeah.
He was interviewed on the Johnny Carson show, and he said that Johnny Carson asked him about life in Russia at the time. And he said, lying is a way of life. Everyone lies to everybody all the time. I was once required to go to a continuing education experience in which the speaker said that if he were to listen to a few of our sermons from each of us, he would know what problems we were facing and what we were doing about them. he said that we simply cannot talk without revealing ourselves. Now, that is presence. I decide when I act what I will reveal. I cannot change you, but I can change me. What I see in and from me colors everything else. My presence, how I choose to act, makes my reality what it is. And of course, this is now history. The scientist looks at bits of reality in as many ways and as carefully as possible. The scientist records findings and shares them with others who, out of their observations, evaluate and share what is known. Their information becomes more and more reliable, but never absolute. This, of course, means that there are better and poorer sources of information. We all know, of course, the power of science to answer problems, but we also know that the answers we have today may not be the answers of tomorrow. I had an economics professor in that community college that I went to, and he always said, I don't care if people steal my tests, the answers change all the time. My wife was teaching, but teaching jobs were scarce. On the other hand, nursing jobs were abundant. My wife went to nursing school, and when she graduated, there were still state boards that had to be passed in order for her to go to work. So she prepared for the test. But before she could actually take it, she developed a physical problem. It was phlebitis in one of her legs, blood clots, and she had to keep her legs up all the time. When she finally took the test, the local hospital had just closed a wing of the hospital and laid off 35 nurses. No jobs were available. And so she went back to where her mother lived, 45 miles away, where they were in need. So I choose, and I act, and I am alive in the present. Always I can say when someone asks the time, it is now. It is the present. But having said that, I know that that now is history. And so when someone asks us the time, we look at our watch and we say, it's 1:28, approximately. And that time passes seamlessly into the past. And I try to stay alive now, sharing these thoughts with you and listening as you stay alive, sharing your thoughts and your thoughts and the actions your decisions cause you to reveal.
Really philosophical today.
Yeah, I thought I was listening to Walt there for a second.
Yeah, no, actually, it's quite the thought,
You
Dan.
got into it pretty good there.
So, Dennis, do you have one?
No, I have nothing today.
Oh, okay, well, we're
Takes the money.
yeah, that's okay. We don't need to worry about that. Okay, so I actually have one. I'm going to aim the camera at me, aren't I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see here.
You gotta get the,
At the empty chair.
yeah.
Okay. It has 12 minutes before it runs out, so
Oh, boy.
I'm going to have to rush
It's
mine.
gonna cut you fine short.
Well, actually, every week I've been doing, for now this is the 28th week, a article for the local newspaper on the history of the fair. And how it works is during the week I don't have these prepared ahead of time, and my attempt is to do something that might be a little bit interesting to the audience, although I don't get too worried about that. But it's something that I'm going to put in my book on the fair, like a little chapter of it. And so I have these microfilms from the St. Croix Falls Library. I have my own microfilm reader, one that was tossed out, takes up about the space of a greenhouse. And anyway, so I sit here and I spool through it, looking for an article on each year's county fair. There's usually some pre-fair stuff and then post-fair stuff that tell what happened. And so right now I'm in the I had the microfilm from 1917 to 1919. And so this is a reflection on this week's column in rough draft. I have to send it in by Monday, usually Sunday. And so I'm trying to explain to people what was at that fair in 1919 and the little background. So it's called Vaudeville at the Fair. Those of us who watched TV in the 1950s and 60s likely watched the Ed Sullivan Variety Show, a bare stage with Ed introducing a variety of performers that included acrobats, trained dogs, dancers, actors, and of course musicians. It was my generation's introduction to what vaudeville had been. Wikipedia tells us, this is my Walt moment here, vaudeville, French, it is a theatrical genre of variety entertainment born in France at the end of the 19th century. Let me just see if that's that. I'll miss out on a car warranty. Hang up, it doesn't look like any number I know. Anyway, okay, so, sorry about that. A vaudeville was originally a comedy without psychological or moral intentions, based on a comical situation, a dramatic composition, or light poetry, interspersed with songs or ballets, or dances, I guess. It became popular in the United States and Canada from the early 1880s until the early 1930s. But the idea of vaudeville performance theater changed radically from its French antecedent. A typical North American vaudeville performance was made up of a series of separate, unrelated acts grouped together on a common bill. Types of acts have included ventriloquists, strongmen, female and male impersonators, acrobats, clowns, illustrated songs, jugglers, one-act plays, or scenes from plays, athletes, lecturing celebrities, minstrels, and movies. We look at the 1918 Polk County Fair advertisement in the St. Croix Standard Press, and along with the usual fair exhibits, the highlights are several vaudeville acts, and it actually says vaudeville acts. The Lenores and the DeLions are acrobatic acts. John Helliott's trained bears and dogs, and they were to be held at the newly opened St. Croix Falls Auditorium Theater. That's the one they keep trying to restore downtown. The 1918 fair was held in the midst of World War I to end a month later in November. The fair was October. And a raging Spanish flu epidemic that soon was to close schools and most public gatherings. However, before the war ended, the flu was somewhat ignored as the war took precedence. And so the Fair Society took over the auditorium for the fair days and promised a full vaudeville slate as well as a silent movie. All movies were silent until 1928. From the Festival Theater website, we learn about the auditorium. The vision by early residents of St. Croix Falls was twofold. The 45 by 95 feet multi-level building had been planned to house a civic community center on the street level and upstairs where they placed a stage for touring vaudeville shows and opera companies. Unfortunately, it seemed that St. Croix Falls was too far from the Twin Cities and its population too small for touring groups to anticipate financial success. In 1918, this was like a year after it opened, it was converted to add a movie projector and screen, making it both suitable for live performances and movies. And the Fair Society added it as part of their 1918 fair programs. The Fair Society often rented other buildings in St. Croix Falls for dinners, dances, and other activities, and provided transportation to and from the fairground via horse-drawn shuttles. The 1918 advertisement reads, evening entertainment at the auditorium. Tuesday evening, moving pictures, continuous performance. Wednesday, 8 p.m., first class moving picture show. The DeLions and Lenores in acrobatic and serial vaudeville performances. A first class funny film. Admission 25 cents to 15 cents for children. Thursday, patriotic entertainment, no admission. 2 authorized war films. 1 or 2 prominent men will speak. A dance too. At the grandstand, another vaudeville act, famed animal trainer John Elliott had his trained bears as well as racing dogs. The newspaper ad has a poorly printed photo of bears on cycles. Pass this around. That's the ad. Bears on cycles and teeter-totters and balls and in dresses. 1918 was also the first year that electric lights covered the fairgrounds and brightened night activities far above the old kerosene and gas lamps. Along with the vaudeville acts, a merry-go-round, baseball games, and the 20 to 40-piece Grantsburg Band was promised. The grandstand not only hosted horse races of all variations, but auto races too. 1918 added the restriction horses and autos and owners must be in Polk County or Taylor's Falls, Minnesota only, probably due to the Spanish flu and the war effort. As I read the 1917 to 1919 Standard Press looking for county fair information, the news was all about the Great War. They didn't call it World War I yet. The mobilization of the country, the military efforts, the home front efforts, with the Spanish flu showing up mostly as increasing numbers of obituaries. 2 very prominent efforts, selling war bonds, U.S. government issued savings bond to fund the war, and the Red Cross that supported troops, the war effort, wounded veterans, etc. This war was funded by loans to our government from nearly every person in the U.S., from cents for war stamps to dollars for bonds, and the relief work for soldiers in whole countries by the Red Cross. At the 1918 fair, food booths were taken over by the local Red Cross to raise money. They promised famed Nevers Dam logging cook Charlie Olson would prepare the meals with beans as a main wartime special. At the bottom of the advertisement was a notice from the local military aviation's mechanic training school that said all aviation exhibitions at fairs in the local area were canceled due to a lack of airplane mechanics. The war had become one of airplanes, and all resources were needed to fight in Europe. Airplanes were a big draw at that time to fairs. The war ended in a month, November 11th, 1918, and the newspapers then concentrated on Spanish flu precautions, with schools closed, masks required, public gatherings restricted, instructions on how to sew a multi-layer mask, and in ever-increasing numbers of obituaries. The epidemic waned by the spring of 1919, although surged again in 1920 and never really disappeared, rather mutating into the H1N1 type viruses that are present today. The fairs returned to normal until the Great Depression of the 1930s and then the polio epidemic of the 1940s. And this is another picture of that bear group. When you read, it says the Lenores or the DeLions or the John Elliott's bears are coming in.
Mary says,
Oh, your husband is here, sitting out there.
I tried to read.
Yeah, anyway, he can, well, we're done pretty much. But anyway, so you can go search on the internet and you can find, John Elliott was a very famous lion and bear trainer and everything. But the vaudeville circuit had been starting to die because of movie houses And so